Going live. Okay, greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. I'm joined here today with Simon Michaux and John Peach and Iver Lofving and others, and we'll be discussing updates in peak oil. So Simon, you go ahead, tell us about your troubles with.
So, over the last 12 months, and Peter, you're going to laugh your ass over this. The last 12 months, I've noticed that all software platforms I've got on my computer are degrading. For example, a software like Google Docs works, everything checks out. I'm doing constant virus and malware cleanings. This doesn't seem to make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it says it works, but some functionality has changed. Something changes somehow. Like usually, for Google Docs, for example, I'm not allowed to edit, and I'm not allowed to, and it will only let me look at it for about 20 seconds before it kicks me out of the program. Right, and the IT department where I work have no answer for this, so they claim and tell me I'm imagining things.
Oh my gosh!
Right, and so Jitsi is one of those platforms. So I was just trying to log on to Jitsi. And on my computer, I could see all of you as in your album, but I couldn't see your picture and I couldn't hear you. My stuff was working fine, but I couldn't connect. So what I've done is connected to my phone. When I actually had my computer wiped with a malware attack and the hard disk was replaced, all of this went away. And over a period of about 3 or 4 days, it all quietly came back.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, I was suggesting, how about trying Linux, a Linux computer, because that's from Finland.
So GTK, in being a government department, has certain rules that it insists on doing, and so you will have a computer and you will run Word, and they're very strict on that, and they have no sense of humor. But what I am going to do is when I go to my next position, I'm going to buy a Linux computer. Buy a computer, load Linux onto it for the express purpose of communications that are actually not messed with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the computer that I have 2 systems drives, and one runs Linux and one runs Windows, and so I can just with the same platform log into either.
So. One of the guys at work wanted to run Linux as a operating system. He got his fingers smacked and said, "No, you must. We have a hive mind here, and we almost have the same thought simultaneously. And you all have the same computer with the same software on it, and we will tell you what you're allowed. They won't even give me administrative permission to actually run my own computer, and anything that I needed administrative permission for, I've got to make an appointment with the IT people and take it back to them."
Wow, so, that is very strict.
Yeah. So they're a government department that's been in place for more than a century, and they believe their own bullshit. That being said, they're a good bunch to work for, but there's a few idiosyncrasies that make me laugh.
Cool. So I had a few questions here. I had one from Peter Sternlicht, which we have sort through the credibility, accuracy, and the implications of the IEA annual report. Here, I'll open it in the tab. Here, copy link.
So this is interesting. With the IEA, the reports are fantastic. They look very shiny. But when it comes time to actually really use them, and get down to the nitty-gritty and look behind the curtain of the numbers are all vague in percentages, and they're actually not that useful.
Where do they get their funding from?
They're a privately funded group. I would suggest they're running through a tax haven of some sort, and no one actually knows.
I thought the IEA was government supported.
They're private. They might have been at one stage, but as far as I know now, they're a private organization.
Oh. So even less useful.
Well, define useful.
I mean,
Useful to who?
Well, I mean, the BP Statistical Review, which is now run by a different organization. I mean, that's not exactly a public.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a public organization.
But for shits and giggles, get actually the year of each of these publications, both IEA but also BP as well, and compare the assessments year after year, and you'll find the numbers are actually quite rubbery. They will change things as years go on. Like a 2020 assessment of what happened in 2017 is different to 2018, which is different to 2019.
Wow.
And they've also discontinued releasing information in a certain kind. Like you can't get reserve data now on BP stuff for gas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the Rystad data the most.
Yeah. You got to pay for it. Anything you got to pay for is probably a bit more reliable.
Oh, okay.
Well,
their summaries are free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've come to the conclusion, though, that the entire green transition movement is a PR exercise to keep us great unwashed convinced that there is a plan.
Right.
And so they still refuse to acknowledge reality, even 5 years after the fact. And you notice a lot of these things have actually they've delayed the rollout of data. They've delayed certain things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with that here in Hawaii, where their whole focus is on this decarbonization plan.
Yeah,
and I did some really, really simple math and came up with the fact that if our state decarbonized its entire grid, a year's worth of their emissions would total up to 3 hours and 45 minutes of global emissions. And we're talking about a global problem that we aren't going to fix here. And in the legislation that they have, that they passed to mandate this, they're sure to point out that we're the first state in the United States to have this mandate. And it's like, okay, but are you considering anything other than your carbon metrics, which don't matter since the rest of the world isn't doing dick all?
Yeah, I have up on the share screen the pathway net zero by 2050. Are you guys familiar with this graphic? It was in the PQL chat.
I can just
barely see it. Yeah, I can.
I'm on my phone.
Is that bigger?
Yes,
is that bigger for you?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you dump that in the peak oil chat in Messenger?
Sure. Yeah. I'll do that. Mm-hmm.
Thanks for hearing me, guys. Sorry to be high maintenance.
It's fine. No problem. We understand.
I'm glad someone does. Jeez.
Yeah. So because Peter, I think this relates to what you were just talking about. I don't know if it helps at all. Do you know what I'm talking about? The graph? Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how realistic do you guys think this graphic is?
I think it's very realistic, but for the wrong reasons.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Tell us.
Well, I think they're thinking that we're going to do all this, electrification, solar and wind energy, and going to just drive the oil company to that business. But from the data, it looks like once we hit the decline, 5% per year, that's pretty much what it looks like. Maybe a little steeper than what I thought, but I don't know. No, it's probably about right.
So I'm wondering, where is the peak of this graph supposed to be? Because
this is a demand graph, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, they claim, right?
Right. I mean, but that's what's being represented is that it's a demand graph.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just wondering is the peak here 2025?
Maybe 2030, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, that graph, if you look at that graph, I just put the ruler up against it. That peak, the cut peak at the top there, that looks like something like between 2024 and 2023.
Oh, so like around now.
Around now. And the only way they're going to get that is with less people, because there's certainly no engineering system that actually will cater for that.
If you take a look at the at the consumption data between 2000 and the end of 2022, which I pulled off of our World in Data, and you add up the fossil and non-fossil consumption, in 2000 it was 77% fossil, 23% non-fossil. At the end of 2022, it was 77 fossil and 23 non-fossil. It had not changed by even 1%, but the consumption was 46% greater over the 23 years. Right. So the mix remained identical, but the consumption went up, which meant we're consuming even more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And one of the issues is our debt system requires us to have constant growth, right?
Yes.
So what will happen if we get past this peak here, and then the economies all start contracting?
Right, it's going to be a collapse. Right, there's going to be a feedback, because as the economies start to collapse, there's going to be less. There will be less demand, right? But then
it's not voluntary, though.
It's not voluntary. No, a lot of people will get laid off. Businesses will go, out, and it will just start feeding back on itself.
Well, people are going to get really cranky because they've been lied to for so long about the fact that this continuously growing economy is an indication of what's healthy and normal and what we want. But that's what created the problem we're in.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that graph assumes we've got a 74.5% contraction from around now to 2050.
So that's this one, the net zero by 2050. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
74% contraction from now.
Something like that, depending on how you. I've just done that by just putting a ruler up on the screen, got the numbers, and put them into Excel.
Oh wow, that's great.
It's just very crude data thief.
Well, this is great. Thank you.
I think they're trying to send us a message.
Yeah. Well, I think this is net zero emissions by 2050 scenario. I don't know. Oh, by the IEA, which we were just talking about, and so yeah, they want zero emissions, and this is basically what we would have to do if we wanted to reach it.
Right.
Yeah. And I have a different graph here. This one's from Art Berman. And he says that basically this is, I think, based on the production side.
Yeah.
Because that was what we were watching on the demand side. And but here you can see, and I also sent the link in the chat for you. He's saying that with natural gas liquids, we'll reach peak in 2027.
4 years away, guys. 3 years away.
3 years away. Yeah. And then I went over that Rystad data, and then I found that we actually it actually only says we have 8 years left.
So we're down to 8 years, 4 years, 3 years. It's a rounding error.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that that Rystad, each year they take IEA, EIA, and BP, and now I can't remember the new name, but they take all their data and they collate it and they come up with their own thing. And the last 2 years in a row, they said that the recoverable reserves, and albeit that they're considering recoverable at $50 a barrel cost. They said the recoverable reserves had contracted by 9% each year over year.
9%.
Yeah, they said that yesterday, last year,
and the year before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This year they said there was an increase. But if you look at their numbers, the only place that it increased was this 2 PCX. So they're speculative reserves. So the things that they're hoping they will discover. And then if you read into it, they're saying that they're hoping we're going to discover all of these huge, what do you call it, billion barrels, or sorry, 1 trillion barrels worth of oil in the ocean. They're hoping we're going to discover.
Oh,
1
that'll
trillion
be
barrels
cheap.
of ocean. Yeah.
The wedge of hope.
Yeah, because the actual numbers of the proven reserves went down 13 billion barrels over here, 285, and then the probable by 505, and so it's just the natural gas liquids that allowed us to have a slight increase in total liquid production, but as Art Berman
I was going to say,
go
but
ahead.
I mean, what he said is, I mean, the natural gas liquids isn't oil; it's not transportation fuel.
Right.
And basically what they can make with it is gasoline. But then there's also lots of plastics. And then I found this gem just recently where they're basically want to feed people plastic now. Have you guys heard of this?
I have, but I haven't seen it.
Me.
Yeah, there's a video on it. This is their official advertisement. You guys can't hear the audio, but they're saying that it tastes vanilla-ish.
Great.
and then it's the the rest of the video is just talking about how plastic is bad for you, that you shouldn't eat their plastic ice cream. But yeah, that's is it actually possible to get any calories out of eating plastic? I'm just wondering if that can help with the food crisis that we would have. Just start pouring.
This looks like
into
something
people.
from the Yes Men or something.
Hmm?
I said this looks like something from the Yes Men. That they do spoofs.
Oh, this might be fake. You're thinking this is fake?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess.
All right.
Oh, plastic.
might be.
Ice cream made of plastic. It's been put forward in a conference I've been to as real.
Oh,
Really?
okay. Yeah.
Whether it was a spoof to start with, it's actually been used in a real context.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, the same conference was suggesting we should eat bugs.
Yes.
I think bugs would
Yeah.
be healthier.
Bugs is very common. So, if they're also doing plastics, I would not be surprised. I mean, really, carbohydrates is what we eat, right? And so this is double salted caramel made from plastic. Yeah. Let's see. What else? So we looked at that. Kevin Hester wanted to talk about peak oil wars.
This next article, I just posted it on. It's very dark. I like it, but oh my God, if that's really what they're thinking of. And the other article that they posted above it on peak oil was really even more interesting because it basically talks about the money aspect. And what he thinks is that this was sort of engineered. The idea was that they push all the Palestinians into Egypt and then somehow get the World Bank or the to forgive Egypt's loans if they do it. But of course, Egypt can see that the visual on this is really bad, so Egypt isn't going for it. And then there's another little thing. They think that maybe there might be oil and gas off of the Palestinian land. So, I mean, is that possible? I think, the old story is that all wars are for God, gold, oil, or drugs. And so maybe, there's an underlying sort of a geopolitical thing happening. He also mentioned that Turkey wants to start its own, it wants to sort of start up the Ottoman Empire again or become the head of the Sunni, the Sunni nations. Mm-hmm. And So Turkey is playing in there somehow also. So I think it's all possible. And I do think, I think things are going on. But meanwhile, I think there's the problem is, see, whenever they borrow money, any of these countries from the World Bank or the IMF, they have to pay it back in dollars. So meanwhile, their own currency devalues, and then they have to pay it back in more and more and more of these dollars. And so I think there might be some little game going on there. I don't know. Just the whole thing, it's just very dark, but I mean, very positive. Thank you.
Simon, did you have any remarks on that?
No, it's so far all on point. Look, I did a chart where we looked at how often we've gone to war over the last 39 years, and the pattern becomes the pattern becomes every time we've started a war, the people who have gone to war with us are in one big alliance in one big column. So if you put in instead of talking about it, maybe I should just pull it up. So where is it?
Yeah, you. Oh, right.
Big picture. Here we go. So
I'm
I'm going to
send it in the chat, and then I can open it.
Okay, yeah. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
So, well, the problem is now we're back to the same problem before. Messenger won't allow me to actually load anything. Okay, I just sent you a PDF. Did it come through?
No.
That's interesting. It's told me the PDF has been loaded.
Oh, weird. Can you send me the link to the PDF in the chat?
No, because actually, what I can do, yeah, let's see if we can do this in Maps. All right, I'm going to send you a link to my website in the chat.
Okay.
Yep, it tells me. This is what I'm saying is in Messenger now. It's told me I've sent you all a PDF in the Peak Oil chat.
Wow. Well, I don't see it. That's what do they call that? Shadow ban or something?
Ghosting or something. All right. So go down to the second map. You've got the first map there. Go to the next one down. All right, that one there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this was actually public. I did this in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so this is on my website. 2019, how often to the previous 39 years had we gone to war, right, where there's oil? And this doesn't include all wars, just most of them.
Okay.
But you've got on the right-hand column, there's the alliance. United States, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, who were an ally up until 1991, Canada, European Union, the United Kingdom, and they were all peak oil literate. There was a study for each one of them that actually said that they understood what peak oil was.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
The column on the left was where they had the battles. The top is military strikes. The bottom is economic sanctions, which are also an act of war. So we've got Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, Venezuela, and Russia. Right. Now, so the column on the right is the alliance, and the column on the left is the what later became the BRICS nations. Well, not all of them, but enough of them.
Right.
So you've got Russia, Brazil, China, India, but all the allies, so the secondary allies around that block happen to be in that left-hand column, with the exception of Iraq, which is actually now under, and Kuwait, which are under American control. So if you look at the recipients and the aggressors together, right, they all have reserves, they all have production and consumption, right, but both sides, like the aggressors, also have reserves and production. So to me, this is a chart that decides who controls the oil industry as we approach peak oil. Who benefits? Right, and so if peak oil really was in 2018, since then it's all gone quiet. We've stopped going to war in areas with oil.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Here it was on our peak oil chat as us, a peak oil group. This politician, what was his name? RFK Jr.
Yep.
He said that we need Israel so that we can control the oil in the Middle East.
Yep.
And so that's
You have to remember, most American politicians are owned and controlled by the Israel lobby. Like to be a member of Congress, like that they had a thing where like all 300 members or whatever, in ceremony, committed themselves to the Israeli interests, and they didn't make a big deal of it, but they've all done that.
Wow.
Right. So yeah, the American system is very much controlled. I think whoever controls the American system is using Israel for larger purposes. The current circumstances that are happening there at the moment, both sides of that conflict don't care about the people on the ground, either one. Right. And I think, if I've got this right, that Israel will be used as a trigger for a larger global conflict, which will provide a distraction while everything else falls apart. Remember, in the background, we've got peak energy.
Yeah,
we've got a financial crash right in front of us. Where just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. Now we've got food shortages on the books as well.
Yeah. I noticed that during the Russia-Ukraine war, they were blaming all of the inflation and other things on Russia. But really, it was a combination of the sanctions and of lower production. Like in Canada, I know our inflation was 7%, and our our oil production declined by 5%. Like there was a direct correlation.
That's a coincidence. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah, but they were like, no, it's Russia's fault. What are you talking about? Yeah. Did anyone else have any comments on this graphic by Simon Michaux?
I assume the two that didn't get listed as peak oil aware, I assume they probably are anyway.
Iraq. Yeah. There are other ones that says aggressors here at the bottom.
Saudi Arabia, to me, they would know the status of their own reserves.
Yeah,
that damn will know. Yeah. And Iraq will so that map that you got up there, the top one, is a geopolitical map to actually help describe and understand what we're going through now.
Well, one thing that, and I could be, connecting things that are unrelated, but, I look at the Saudis deciding to sell off Aramco and I go, why would they do that?
Yeah. What's Aramco?
That's the Saudi state oil company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If they sell off now, they get a big wad of cash, and then the oil production, which from this point on gets harder, becomes someone else's problem.
Oh, okay.
We all saw the Mohammed bin Salman interview, the Al Arabiya interview, and I think he's being, really, he's saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, exactly. That's what that was. So it was like, what a world leader is admitting to peak oil. It's like that U.S. will be at 20% of its production,
and everybody's looking at emissions instead of how does the circulatory system for the global economy keep functioning.
Yeah, you got it.
Here, while we're on that topic, I have the U.S. shale here. And so as we can see, basically peak oil, conventional oil for the U.S. was in 1970. This is an often cited thing. People were like, oh, they said peak oil was in 1970, but it wasn't, but it was. But then we had the tight oil. And so it still seems like it's rising. Do you guys, but what I heard was that what they're doing is they've drilled most of the wells that they can drill, and now what they're doing is they're kind of recycling them by so the initial fracking, they just they drill a hole and then they have the bores on the side, the horizontal wells, and then they put in the fracking fluid, and then they crack it with an explosion, and then a little bit flows in. And then for the secondary, what they do is that they the horizontal wells, they line them with metal, and then they make tertiary, like diagonal wells or something, and then they blow those up to get more oil. Am I on the right track here?
Has everybody watched the conversation between Nate Higgins and Art Berman? Probably maybe 6 weeks ago, where he really dives in, where Art Berman dives into what his thoughts are, and he just I mean, I would describe it as the big shrug. What are you going to do?
Yeah. So the devil's
anyhow,
in the
I
diesel.
highly recommend it.
The devil's in the
Devil's
diesel.
in the diesel, right? Yeah, because you can't make diesel from shale.
So there's two analysts in the global system that can really get to the nitty gritty in oil. Art is one, and John, you're the other.
No.
So, John, what's your opinion on this graph?
So one of the things that they do is it's called DUC, it's drilled but uncompleted, and that's done so that they can maintain the lease, right? They basically drill the hole, but they don't finish it, but that gives them rights to that area. And so they did a bunch of those, and now they're completing them, but they're not drilling a whole lot of new ones. So I think that's basically what Art was getting to, is that we're kind of using up what's left. And, it's really kind of sucking out the juice at the bottom of the cup of ice, right? All these little tricks are just trying to get the last little bit out. The other thing I noticed that here is the Alaska, is just about done, because at some point when the flow rate gets too low, the cold weather will clog up that pipeline, and they'll have to shut it down. So it's not much left anyway, but I think they're just about done.
Yeah, it looks like it's fading into insignificance already on this graphic.
Yeah.
Well, hey, John, I mean, one of the things that you just mentioned, which is really, really important, and most people don't acknowledge, is that term flow rate, because all energy is measured in volume over time, and we measure kilowatt hours and barrels per day, and that flow rate is what keeps everything going. So when I hear somebody talk about there's there's billions of barrels, and Canada's the Saudi Arabia of oil sand, I go, okay, yeah, what's the flow rate? Because that's what really matters.
Right. And I think I've kind of discounted tar sands for any time beyond when the conventional oil flow rate falls too low, just because it won't be supportable, right? That we won't be able to keep getting oil from tar sands if we don't have conventional oil to help it move.
Well, aren't they using natural gas to essentially boil the liquid fuel out of dirt?
Yeah. And there's been talking about using nuclear energy to do the same thing, but for both of those, I think the EROI is going to be too low.
So it's a high heat operation then.
Right.
And not just that, like the largest trucks in the world are the ones used for the tar sands, right? It's like the one where the person only goes up halfway up the tire. And so I think I remember they were saying for 1 barrel of tar sands, you need 5 tons of sand and 3 barrels of water that are heated with natural gas or I guess hydroelectric or whatever to near the point of boiling in order to get the tar out of that sand. And then there's also the environmental waste of all the slurry that then that they have to put like those balls on top of it to keep the birds from landing, because if the birds land into one of these slurry ponds, they will immediately die and they won't be able to lift off because it will be too slippery and the fumes will get them.
John, with the fracking wells, when they begin to decline, what's the decline rate on them?
It's about 90% in the first 3 years. So basically, you just kind of pop the balloon.
Yeah.
It's very rapid.
We see this rapid ascent here. So it's going to be a rapid descent on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Do we have any idea when it will peak? Because, I mean, we thought it was peaking in like 2018-ish year, because it did go down for a bit, but now it's gone back up 2023.
Yeah, so...
and that's from the new technology, from the recycling. Or, you know.
You're referring to an American or a U.S. peak, because globally there's corresponding contraction, with existing conventional operations.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, there's, from what I understand, the United States, and through fracking, has been responsible for well over 80% of the global volume increase of liquids.
Right.
Since like 2010.
Yeah. Well, there was a good graphic on it, where it was showing how the global supply is actually decreasing, and it's only the U.S. that is propping it up.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone has a link to that, but I know in the chat here, someone mentioned Environmental Coffee House. There's still fracking. We just won't let it happen in our state and many states. And that just reminds me of this water graphic that we have here. So does anyone remember what this means here? The gray and the blue. So I think blue is how much water they have, and gray is how much water they need in order to do the fracking.
Huh.
Or what? Which one is it?
I think you're right about that.
So, but yeah, it's for some reason it says it like there's produced water, and then there's hydraulic fracking, and then it was very confusing in the article. But basically, they were saying that in these dry areas where the gray bubble is bigger than the blue bubble, they don't have enough water to do the fracking at the rates that they want to do it for this, because this is projected volumes. And so even if they wanted to do more fracking in some of these places, they just don't have the water. They would have to take it away from agriculture and from the regular people and things like that. But the coastal areas, it's still all right. They have enough. All right. So here, let me just check what else we got here. I had rural transition mineral estimates. Simon Michaux liked it. I don't know if you had any more comments on it. Here, I'll open it up again.
So I'm actually working on my next step, which is what you're trying to do there. And if all goes well, I'll be able to talk about this publicly very soon. And everything that you've got in there, the kind of thinking that you've got in there is not exactly the same, but we're trying to hit the same targets. But I'm working on three fronts. One is energy and resources and manufacture reinvention.
Okay.
One is how do we grow our food and connect with the natural environment in a way that is a bit more sensible, and that's what you're doing there. And the third one is a new social contract.
Mhm.
right? So, that and the podcast that was put out by the Great Simplification, Nate Hagen's recently about the non-fossil fuel food systems, right? The people bag that thing. Oh, come on, you're not thinking about this. You're not thinking. It's all good stuff. We need to hit these targets, and everyone involved will not like the changes that are coming, right?
Mhm.
So you might say this is impractical, right? But when your whole life and everything around you goes arse over tea kettle, right? What do you do about it?
Mhm.
And so what you've got there is a nice starting point for one big part of the problem. Like, how do we grow our food, and what the hell do we do? Because we can grow our food, we're not going to build a nuclear power plant.
Right. Yeah. So my idea was basically because we have such a mineral deficiency, that to minimize the amount of imported materials we would need by, like, say, letting everyone have enough land to grow their own food forest, because food forests are very low input, since they have leaves that fall down and fertilize the soil. And then I was just thinking, what is the minimum amount of electronics they would need? And so I included like LED lighting, a laptop, a smartphone, a high efficiency fridge, water pump, ventilation, desktop computer and monitor, which I was like, that's I'm not sure that about that one, but it works out to 2.875 kilowatts a day. And then I had it, you'd need like 1.5 kilowatts solar panels and 18 kilowatts of capacity of batteries, or 36 kilowatts in lead acid. And then the mineral estimates, like gallium and aluminum and copper. And then even for the wiring. And then I also have it for the community level. So because like one family on its own. So that was for a family of 6, assuming they can get by with just that. And then for the community level, they would have like a FM transmitter, and then desktop computer and a printer to produce educational materials and things like that.
What's
But
what's the size? What's the size of the community you're in your model?
So the first level of community is 60 people, but then I also had the village level, which is 360. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
Mhm.
But basically, it's supposed to scale up. I'm hoping to scale it up to at least the city level, which will be the where you can have a thorium plant to do the manufacturing.
I've been slowly working my way through how the world really works. I believe that's the right title by Vaclav Smil. And there's a section in there where he talks about agriculture, and that he does a nitrogen analysis, and basically he says, without the input of fossil fuels for how that without the inputs of nitrogen-based fertilizers, that the ability to produce the volume of food needed for a specific, for a larger population just simply is not there. You biochemically, it's not there. And the amount of work, that physical labor that needs to go into it is significantly higher. So I think implicit with what you're suggesting, one, it's doable, but it's not doable for a population that resembles what is alive today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a problem with my camera. I'm just going to rejoin here.
I think you nailed it with the words, the population as it is today, as
Right.
society is today. It's all about to be reinvented to a different set of boundary conditions.
Yeah.
Of all kinds.
I just heard an interesting thing. The two people that ran the grid in Texas and ran the grid in California were talking about it, and they said by the year 2050 they have to have like something like a 65% increase in the grid in order to support all the electric cars and all the various things that they have planned. And I was thinking, they're not going to get more on their grid. They're going to have it's going to be a smaller grid, but they were planning for, a large bump in energy use, electricity use at least. And so you can't run this world. They were not admitting it, but you just really can't run what we're doing now with, electricity. It isn't going to work.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't hear people talking about anything beyond light duty transportation, EVs and that kind of thing. And it just, you take a look at, if you go to like marinetraffic.com and you look at a snapshot of the global shipping traffic, it's just staggering. And none of that stuff runs on electricity.
Right.
And even if you do get a carbon-free fuel, the energy density of whatever they use isn't gonna support their current revenue model, because how much space is going to be taken up for them to get from point A to point B, unless they can refuel. I mean, in the Pacific, they have the option, if we build the infrastructure here, to refuel in Hawaii. But if, across the Atlantic, anyhow. So,
Yeah.
Well,
So
it's going to go to wind, and they're already starting on it. A lot of big companies are already figuring out ways of, once you're out in the trade winds, you could, even if it's a pig like a freighter or something, a giant tanker or something, you could push that thing some percentage of the time with wind.
yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be pretty. And eventually you'll have to go back to like cargo. It'll be slower, but it isn't that much slower. These things don't move very fast.
7 knots. Yeah.
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 But I think
all the trade winds, right?
Yeah.
That's where trade happened.
Yes. So it's got to go back to where it happened. You have to kind of like come across the Atlantic up north, and then you have to go back across the Atlantic further south, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there something like 90,000 container and tankers on the seas and oceans? Is that right?
Yeah.
90,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If you've ever been outside of a big trade port, we were in, I don't know if it's a big one, but we were outside of Greece, outside of Athens, and you can see just, the first, we went out to the island of Aegina, and probably the first half of the voyage were giant, container ships parked, and oil tankers just parked on enormous moorings. So I'm sure it's the same thing. I know it's the same thing outside of New York. I know it's the same thing outside of Los Angeles. I mean, everywhere there's, you just realize the scale of it when you actually are out on a boat looking at it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, guys.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I've just got a request from my management to join a meeting urgently.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Nice to see you all. Got to go.
Okay, nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Duty calls.
See you, Simon.
Peter,
Fair enough.
Peter, tell them all about our work in Hawaii.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
All right. See
ya.
you. Thanks for joining us.
The same thing is happening with commercial aircraft. In July this year, there were 134,000 commercial air flights in one day. I mean, it's staggering. There's 20,000 commercial aircraft in the air at any one time. I mean, I'm spouting off all this stuff because I just did a presentation, really questioning the decarbonization strategy, where I was on a panel with, there you go. That's the aircraft.
Yeah, this is at any given time. Well, this was in 2012, so it might be even more now.
Well, the thing is the icons are too big to really represent what's going on in that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's anyhow, I did a I was on a panel with the deputy energy officer for the state of Hawaii, and I'm really nervous about the fact that what we have going on here in terms of like baked into law is that we have to meet these certain decarbonization levels by a certain date. And I mean, I think we all know that, that the ability to replace these systems, the battery systems and the wind systems, is going to be really a challenge 20 years from now when the replacement cycle starts. And so we're baking ourselves into a situation where we'll meet this number, but how long can we keep it going? And so, we're really looking at geothermal, and, we have that option here. So it's, politicians are figuring out what to do, and they don't have the information. They're it's a PR campaign.
So
I think they have constituencies that want to fly. That's the other thing. I mean, you watch, the news, TV, etc., and they talk about people flying all the time, like it's a birthright. And you think about it, you're burning up basically, on a long haul flight to Europe and back, you're burning up half of a winter's, fuel. Well, that kerosene, I don't really understand, why these countries don't limit air travel for most people. But I think it's just like you have to keep these people flying. They have to stay up there.
Yeah.
To keep the GDP.
I heard that France were going to ban internal. Flights.
Reduce internal flights.
Short haul.
Yeah,
they have fast trains though, which are an option.
Super useful.
I mean, and rail's close to 40% electrified already anyhow. So.
Oh.
Yeah. France has banned short-haul domestic flights in favor of train travel. Yeah. They have like those nuclear trains. They're very fast. So I wanted to address a couple points by Peter. So first off, in terms of the inputs, I agree that there's no way we can reach the same production rates that we have now with fossil fuels, especially for those GMO crops like corn and soy or and wheat. Like when they produce wheat, they can produce 4 to 8 times more than you could in a natural setting. Like I think naturally you can produce 4 tons per hectare, and I think like some places there's like 10 or 16 or 20 tons per hectare. But if you were just to do the average production, so like 4 tons per hectare, then you could have so this is based on like a global hectare, which is assuming 6 months of growing season and at least 500 millimeters rainfall, and then you could have your core food at a quarter hectare, and then a food forest. Because you need to have your core food just like as annuals, just so you have food your first year, and then you plant your food forest around that with your perennials and shrubs and things like that. And then you could also have a wood coppice for your firewood and your fuel wood. And so that's an option. And then also I had a question from the Environmental Coffee House here, YouTube viewer, about hydroelectric power. And it is from my understanding, it is one of the viable ones. And on my kind of a peace treaty here, I have it at the city level. So either a hydroelectric or a thorium plant to facilitate industrial production, because we can't do industrial production with either solar or wind power. It's because the EROI just isn't there. So we would need either hydroelectric or thorium.
Yeah, I mean, hydro is one of those things that is, it was a source for energy and has been for hundreds of years. And, the prime sites for utility scale hydro are all pretty well developed. And in recent years, it just, you can't do hydro just wherever you want to do it. I mean, it's very weather and, and land contour specific. I mean, for instance, like where I live, we get, this is a really dry year for us, and we're gonna get 90 inches of rain. So 90 inches.
Yeah, I'm just getting a calculator here. So that's 2.2 meters. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, and that's a drought year, which is what we're in the middle of right now. Normal is between 140 and 160. 2018, we had 240. We literally had 20 feet of rain, but we don't have any rivers. Is the point?
How is that possible?
Well,
is it mountains?
We've got two 14,000 foot volcanic peaks here, Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. No, it just the geology of the island is such that it literally is absorbed. We have streams. We have one hydro plant here in Hilo that is a 3 megawatt plant, and it's been in operation. It's been in operation for 110 years.
Yeah, well, the other side of the island though is dry.
Yes.
On Hawaii, because my wife's grandfather was he was a cowboy over on the Big Island.
Yeah,
she's from
that's where
she's
I live.
from Hawaii.
Oh, you're on the Big Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hawaii. She's from she's part Native Hawaiian. But the thing is, you could do something that is very useful. If you have some kind of like a little grid, you can do pumped hydro. Pumped hydro is really useful for storing what do you call it? Renewable energy. You really need some kind of a big battery like a pumped hydro.
Yeah.
They've been doing it in New York State for
we have 5 volcanoes on this island, and 3 of them are active. So we got a lot of heat, and we can boil water.
Yeah, my wife.
Oh wow, just with geothermal.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you'd be able to do geothermal over there, since wow. So
we could, if the island of Hawaii could set up a kind of a model mini grid, if you could have some geothermal, I bet you could even put some wind in and some solar.
We have all that.
Balance it with the pumped hydro. You could probably, make it almost like a little model for a mini grid.
Yeah. Again, it's geology and weather. It's a very unique spot. The Big Island. But yeah, I mean, I think we have just about every climate zone that exists on the Earth on this one island. I mean, everything from permafrost to desert.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique place, and there's not a lot of people here.
Oh.
Well,
no.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was surprised. Hawaii is actually within carrying capacity. If you guys did like food forests, you could be like the Tecopians.
Yeah, I have a friend. Actually, it's somebody who I was introduced to through Simon, who has 37 acres and is doing the kind of food production model that you're talking about. If you'd be interested, I'd be really happy to invite him to maybe join in on one of these.
Sure.
One of these meetings sometime, because fascinating guy, very intense, very driven, but it's like he's got maybe 1,000 animals all running wild on his property. I mean, everything from goats to sheep to cows to horses, sheep, chickens, geese, pigs. I mean, they're just, and they all hang out together. It's an amazing thing to see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
he has well, basically an animal farm then. Right?
well, the thing is yeah, I mean, the animals are part of the ecosystem that
Mhm.
replenish the nutrients in the soil for growing food. And he's doing, he's doing things like contouring the land for watershed. I mean, he can really much better explain it.
Mhm.
But the kind of model that you were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
is, I mean, he's doing that here. And if
In Hawaii.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
just a
Okay.
few
Cool.
miles from here.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gary Rosenberg. And again, it is like I said, I mean, somehow he lives here, and Simon turned me on to him.
Mm-hmm. And so does he also do food forests?
I'm not familiar with that term, but
okay.
so
So yeah, I was gonna show you the Tecopians. They are one of the model cultures. They have lived on this little island for 3,000 years.
wow.
And do you see how it's all covered in forest? Every single one of those is a food forest tree that is producing either food or fiber or something important for their community. And so yeah, they're also in the Pacific. So, but it's pretty far from you, so I don't know if you have any friends that can sail there.
Yeah. Well, I have friends who are, I mean, wayfinding, canoeing, sailing. Va'a is the Hawaiian word for the Hawaiian canoes, like the Hokulea. They sail, between the islands all the time. And a lot of the smaller islands, that's how they get, they get their import food is,
Mhm.
From indigenous people sailing these small canoes and bringing them supplies. So,
So it says it is 5,300 kilometers. That may be more than a canoe trip.
well,
Well, no, they went all the way across the entire Pacific, and they had a
Well, if you have a sail, I think you'd need a sail.
completely
Yeah.
sailing, completely
Sorry,
different navigation system from ours, but it actually worked really well.
they use the stars for navigation, and so they their master navigators don't need any instrumentation. The Hokulea sailed around the world,
Mhm.
circumnavigated the earth, and so that's how, I mean, it was through that that Hawaii was discovered from Tahiti.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know? Do you guys have mangroves on Hawaii?
I'm not sure. My sense is to say yes, but I can't guarantee that.
It
Okay.
drops off pretty steep into the Pacific, so it's probably not a lot of mangroves, because mangroves like a long, slow, descent from ground to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know that's one of the things, one of my wish lists for the Tecopians is to get mangroves. Oh, it says here you got mangroves. Oh, that's Florida.
Non-native mangroves in Hawaii.
Molokai. Yeah,
Molokai, yeah.
non-native mangroves. Yeah, Molokai Island. So yeah, so there are some mangroves here.
Yeah, it's interesting. The population of Molokai is 7,000 people.
Wow. And what is the size of it?
Small.
Here, Molokai.
Wish I could be more accurate than small.
Yeah.
Molokai was the leper colony island.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the leper colony. Okay. Yeah.
It's not that
says
anymore.
population is 10 people per kilometer squared. Yeah, definitely within carrying capacity. But it looks like a little deserted over here.
Yeah. Oh, one side is desert, the other side is wet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of bizarre. That's most of these islands are that way.
Yeah.
Well,
like a big rainbow effect.
it should still support enough people, even if it's only half the island is habitable.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, because I know the Ticopians, they're always doing land reclamation because they're a high island that keeps rising up out of the ocean, and then they have like these like long sandy beaches, and then they keep getting hit by what is it called, hurricanes, and then the hurricanes take out a lot of things, but the Mongroves would really help with that. Like here, if you see, like you can see there's sand around here, so they could plant mangroves there. That would reduce the amount of battering they get from tidal waves and such. I think
I currently live on a huge river delta in the south of China, and they lost a lot of their mangrove forests through development.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
But they're the Chinese now are replanting them back in mass.
Oh yeah, good.
We had how many? 4 typhoons this year so far, which brushed the coast where we are.
Where in China?
Guangzhou.
Okay, can you spell that?
Guangzhou is Guangzhou.
Guan.
G Guang, and then ZHOU.
ZHOU. Guangzhou. Sorry, JIAN Zhou.
Guangzhou. Guang GAUNG, I think.
G. Okay, maybe you're gonna have to put it in the chat because there's
not JIN.
GUANG.
GUANG.
Yeah. Did I say J? Sorry.
Okay. GUNG. Okay. Guangdong province, China. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go. All right. Now we have an idea. Okay, so that looks inland. Oh, I see. But okay. So over here?
Yeah, with Guangzhou itself, if you look at it, it's just made up of riverways.
Oh, okay.
It's difficult to see on the map there, but yeah, essentially you've got Hong Kong on the right there, Macau on the left, and then as you come up the estuary, then it just splits into huge riverways.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Massive
Guangzhou. There it is.
Yeah. So I live in Foshan, which is just south of Guangzhou.
Yeah.
But so what they're doing is trying to recreate what was lost.
Oh well, that's good. I don't know if
there's quite a lot of that over here.
Yeah, well, I know the Chinese are good at doing like reforestation and things like that.
Yeah, I don't think they haven't really traveled that far from their old way of living, I don't think. So very much it's still intact. I mean, if we were to look outside my place here, it's very, very built up, it's concrete city, but in between is even on the roadside verges, they'll grow vegetables everywhere. And then you get old ladies, which they call aunties. They'll sell it slightly cheaper than the shops on the roads.
Yeah. Did you have any other updates from China, from peak oil wise, or how are they doing?
Well,
don't hear much about them.
Yeah.
Do they produce oil as well?
They're oil producers, yeah. But I'm pretty sure they're big importers. Well, they will be, of course,
Mm-hmm.
big importers more than producers.
I know they import a lot from China. I'm sorry, not from
Russia.
from Russia. From Russia, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, they border Russia, so I mean that's natural.
Mm-hmm.
There's no love lost between Russia and China, by the way.
Yeah. No, they're friends.
That is, they're not particularly friendly.
Oh,
China-
you mean they're
but they share a common enemy.
the West?
Actually, the Chinese are not aggressive people at all. They're very standoffish. You know, if they're put into a position where their aggression comes to them, they're very withdrawn and standoffish. Yeah. Naturally, they're not. There's a lot of in their culture. It's it's quite frowned upon. But nevertheless, if they're backed into a corner, they're pretty feisty, I think.
I made.
Yeah, go on.
A
That's a great
parable.
picture.
Thanks. Yeah. Of well, it's more of a spiritual parable, but it uses
the
Confucianism and Taoism, and then I also have one over here. And it's basically part of my project. Like remember, Simon Michaux was saying the social contract. He was working on a new social contract. So this is basically my version of it. I know, Leon, you said you had a look at it. Did you? And
I haven't looked at it yet, but I do intend to. Yeah. Okay, I'm currently working on creating like a localization project of my own, very early stages of it. I'm hopefully going to get a scholarship on a permaculture design pro course, which is kind of double the length of a conventional homestead course.
Right. Do you mind if I ask, what do you do there in China, Leon?
I'm teaching at the moment.
Oh, that's
English?
Great. What do you teach?
Teaching English, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you planning on being in China as things get touchier?
To leave?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, where are you headed, or what is your eventually?
Well, I'm not sure. I think I have a feeling that I want to go back to England and attempt to help my local community there to mitigate, coming predicaments we're already in. But it's complicated. I've got kids and an ex-wife who also live in China, and my ex-wife's thought processes are not as not the same as mine at the moment.
Is she Chinese?
No. She's English too. So she'll acknowledge a lot of the facts that I give her about what's happening, but continue to talk as if everything's going to continue on as normal. So at the moment, we're not quite on the same page, but very amicable. And so I would like for us to go back to the UK perhaps within the next couple of years and try and organise something over there. But I'm not sure. I'm not worried about being over here as potential problems, could escalate at the moment, to be honest.
Well, if there is problems, believe me, they'll get you out. That seems to me like that's the thing. Like, I was thinking about as things happen. My sister was basically kicked out of Denmark really quickly during COVID. They figured out a way to fly people back, So I think that's, as an expat, you kind of feel like, okay, what could happen, You realize.
Yeah. I've got some really good Chinese friends here, and I do feel it is comfortable to live here.
Yeah.
The economy has slowed down. I get a fairly decent wage at the moment, which goes a long way. So I don't know. We've just got to try and sort of deal with what comes as it comes. I think overall.
Can Brits go anywhere in the Commonwealth? Nations?
No.
So I would like to mention that United Kingdom is more than twice as overpopulated than China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at over here, and the biocapacity gigahectares per person is 0.56 in the UK, and their current usage is 7.93. And then in China, they have 0.94 hectares per person, and their usage is only 3.38. So you're actually, from a sustainability standpoint, you're better off in China.
Well,
especially if you get. Go ahead.
So I do have a Chinese girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
And she's actually from a fairly remote village in Guangdong, which is about 3 hours, 2 hours drive from here, up in the mountains.
Very good.
Yangtze.
I think that would be your best bet, honestly.
Well, that place is. I love it up there because it's thousands of years old and it's not changed much at all, and it has fruit forests and
nice.
They drink the spring water from the mountain, pretty much directly. Not much, and they only got electric up there in like 15, 20 years ago. In most of the houses, still no running hot water in her mum's house. But of course, she doesn't use electricity. She goes to bed when it gets dark, and she gets up when it gets light. So most of her electricity use isn't. She doesn't need to use it, And then she'll wander off and go and get her kindling and wood, bamboo, and all sorts of different stuff. She picks up, brings it back, stacks it. Got a lovely old. I don't know the type of the oven, but it's open fired, and then you push the stick in, and then continue to push the stick in as it burns down. Can't remember the name of them.
Oh, okay.
Do you know the type I mean?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's multiple kinds of stoves.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great up there. It is really. But if when it all goes to pot, where's my ex-wife going to be in relation to my children, and how do they feel about staying? Can they stay here? If in China, if you want to become a citizen, it's a very long process, and you have to also give up your own national passport to do so.
Oh, they don't accept dual citizenship.
No, so there'd be no going back. But then again, at that point, in a low fuel economy, global economy, it's very difficult to get back anyway. So
yeah. That's my recommendation for most people is to go to a rural area and connect with the local people there, either in a church setting or some other kind of worshipy setting where you recognize the inherent dignity of all people. That's basically your best bet, because there's different kinds of churches or settings. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It could be a commune or communist or whatever. It doesn't matter, as long as they're willing to admit that everyone has inherent dignity and is worthy of life and human rights, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're aware of like the mass migration within China.
What's the mass migration in China?
Well, once a year there's a mass migration in China. Where
Oh, okay.
Billions of people migrate back
With the migrant
to
workers.
Yeah, they migrate back to their villages and hometowns, and literally Guangzhou is a ghost town. And it currently now, as we speak, as I'm talking to you, there's 20 million people here.
Wow.
In this one city. So imagine that just emptying out. You can't. You know you have to buy train tickets in advance to have a chance of getting back to your hometown.
So is the mass migration from the urban area to the rural, or the other way around?
It's they live in the city and work, and then so it's actually they've migrated to the city, but then they migrate back to their hometowns during the Chinese New Year for 1 month.
For 1 month they go home. Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
Whole month.
Okay, well that's good. That's because if they maintain a connection with that rural area, so that's actually very good, because it will make it easier for them to transition to the post-oil world, where they will just continue. They will not be migrating back to the city. They will just stay in the rural areas, and the idea is to coordinate things with like radio and internet and things like that.
One more thing before we get off topic. In regards to the UK, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is, if I do go back there, clearly localization is going to happen anyway, right? So with a low fuel economy, it has to, right? Because we're not going to have the ability to travel out and travel back. Right. So, in regards to that, rural areas are going to be a great place to create food. To grow, reintroduce habitat actually is important, but to also grow food and grow food forests, etc., right? So if you live in a rural area, you're in a good spot initially.
But you also have to be far enough or isolated enough from the closest cities.
Right.
Because
So this is what I was going to say to you. So then the suburban areas also have a good chance of creating mitigation through growing food, etc., and
I'm not sure about that, because most suburban areas don't have enough land to grow their own food.
In England, the suburban areas are kind of like their foot's in the countryside. Okay,
well, because you need, even in England, you would need at least like half a hectare per person. So at least one acre per person.
So the question is, what does it look like when we're transitioning over to this? When you've got a rural area that's mitigating, a suburban area that's moving into the rural area to mitigate, then you've got the cities, which historically empty with collapse. So and in the cities now in the UK, they're hugely populated by foreign nationalities from all over the world, which have already tribalized.
Yes. So this whole like area you see here in Britain, that's like with all these cities, that's like that's a goner. It's just like it's not good. Like the probability of survival there is very low if we are in a collapse scenario, and like over here. But these areas farther north, like over here in Scotland, or if you're on one of these islands, it's very hard to grow anything there. It would be
in Scotland. In Scotland, their growing season comes about a month after ours in the south.
It has to do with like their soils being very poor and things like that, more so than the climate.
Probably very acidic
and-
soil up there.
It's very windy. It's also
Yes,
very
it is.
windy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very windy, and so there's a limited amount of things you can grow there. But yeah, basically, what based on the history books I've read about these different collapse scenarios, and the famines, they usually last like at least 6 to 7 years. It's basically it's until the carrying capacity drops to sustainable levels. And in the first stages, you may have organized rebellions or whatever, where they're like, give us food or whatever. And, maybe they'll get some or something. But eventually, once that dries up, all of those cliques or things based on ethnicity or whatever, they kind of fall apart if they're not able to feed their membership, and they just start eating each other. That's like in the second, third stages of famine. And like, for instance, in China, historically, they would eat their children. And in Ireland, the children would eat their parents. And so it was kind of different on the...
And then they moved on to potatoes?
No, this was during the potato famine.
So essentially what you're saying is it's a cultural thing, right?
Well, it was. Listen, the potato famine was actually the Irish were exporting food the whole time of the potato famine. But what happened was they were all export crops, and meanwhile, people like Earl Grey. If you're Irish, you don't want to drink Earl Grey tea because Earl Grey was like, "Okay, we can't help them at all. We cannot help them one bit," and it was basically created. It was a created famine because, potatoes were important, but it was basically the land system, which was, the way the land system worked. Everybody, the people that owned all the land wanted to get their people out. I'm having a cramp. They wanted to get their people out, so they would take them to Shibboleth, and they put them on ships and send them out. And so they would make it to Canada. If you've ever been to Gros Isle, that's where there were a lot of Irish people there sent there. That was the famine. That was the quarantine island on the way into Quebec. So they would send these ships there for free, and then they try to sneak into the United States, and they would try to get in through Maine. There were an awful lot of Irish people in Maine came in through here. And, fortunately, there was this safety valve for people to come and be someplace. But they were created famines. They were created by empires. And like in China, they used to have food in all these different regional places. They had like food stores, and they were all monetized. They said, you've got to get that food out to the coast and sell it. So once you have a market economy like that pushed in, it practically guarantees a famine because along comes a drought. And they used to just, in China, they used to just dump all the food out every time they had a famine. They dump all this centralized food out. Well, they couldn't do it anymore. And in a lot of ways, Ireland was similar in that, there was food, but not once you monetize it, The only thing that the Irish had to eat were those potatoes because that was the actual food product. But meanwhile, they were tenant farmers, so they had to produce something else for the people that owned the land.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that basically, yeah, you're right. There were multiple famines, and I've read like some history books, and China, at least some of them, managed them very well by opening up the granaries, letting the people that didn't have enough food get that food, putting the food from the south, which was still had the rains or whatever, and the food to the north, so that the people in the north could eat. And like so they had a ration system. Everything was working fine. But by contrast, England has what's called a Protestant work ethic, and they believe that poor people don't deserve to eat. Because they misinterpret some scripture for this. And so those who don't work don't eat. And so during the Irish famine, what they did is they're like, okay, all you Irish people are starving. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you work breaking rocks with sledgehammers. Only men could do that. and then they couldn't afford the clothing, or like they would just be given like grovel, or whatever. And then so the men were away breaking these rocks, and then the women and the children couldn't work breaking rocks, and so they ended up starving to death and dying. So it was like the women were left with the children, and the women weren't going to eat their own children, and so the children ended up eating their mothers, whereas the men were dying at the breaking rocks. And I made this picture to contrast that if you had land distribution, where you give everybody enough land to grow their own food, they can just grow it. That was another issue with the Irish famine, was that the Protestants owned all the land, and the Catholics didn't, who were the regular Irish people, didn't. They didn't have enough land to grow their own food, and they also didn't have the methodology to do it. Like they didn't know about food forests, and they were trying to grow their own food through sheep and farming, which was what the English had taught them how to do. Because basically, when the British had invaded, Ireland was actually hazelnuts from shore to shore to shore, and because it's perfect climate. It's highly alkaline soil, and it's thin, and there's lots of rain, and so it's just perfect climate for hazelnuts. And you can grow hazelnuts all over the place. But the thing is that the Irish were hiding behind the hazelnuts, and that made it hard to tax them. And then they could jump out at any point and kill the British people. And so they just cut down all the hazelnuts from shore to shore. And that's why in a lot of places in Ireland, you look and it's just grass all the way to the seashore, because the British wanted to be able to see there's no Irish hiding behind any shrubs. And so they basically will have to transition back to like hazelnut agriculture or something like that in Ireland.
Hazel's a fantastic tree. We've got a lot of hazel in the south of England. Great tree.
Excuse me, I have to drop off.
Oh,
but,
okay.
This has been a real pleasure, and I expect to see you again soon. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you, Peter. Really interesting viewpoint.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
this is all great.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing to look at reality from all these different viewpoints. How it all works. There's certain people that write amazing books about kind of the history of these places, and going to places you realize how it worked. I know this is not just and it was not just an English thing. People don't realize that as many Swedish people or Scandinavians came to the United States also because they were starving, because the big landowners owned everything and they couldn't make a living also.
That's still the problem in the UK is land ownership. It's huge amount of the land is owned by the Crown. Well, all the land is owned by the Crown. But it's
Yeah, owned by the Crown means it's owned actually literally by the royal family.
Yeah.
So they actually own it. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking, I don't want to pick on the British or anything, but and most monarchies, you think about it, it's like most societies organize around taking care of their elites, but you think about it, it's all organized to take care of this group of people that really don't pay taxes, etc. I mean, I think, in a way, the taxes broke up a lot of big estates, I know, in the United States, because all of a sudden you had to pay taxes on them,
The royal family encourages a huge amount of tourism, for example, bring in massive amounts of revenue to the country. But
no, they're good for that.
I'm not, historically, I find history interesting, good and bad, but I'm not one to, I'm not going to say too much about it, but I'm not one to be. I'm not a royalist, put it that way.
No, I get you. I mean, it's just different strategies. I mean, I think in the end, it's going to be interesting to try to see, with this drop in the amount of energy, who tries to lock it up. That's what I'm a little worried about. I mean, reading that one OK Doomer article, you just realize, oh, okay, is that what we're trying to do? Like the West is saying, we are going to try to, monopolize certain energy resources. And so I wonder if that's what's going to kind of happen. People are going to try to, as a whole group, the whole West is going to try to grab energy resources and maybe fail. I'm not sure.
I think they will definitely fail.
Yeah.
Because we're just running out of them. I mean, it's like they're waging these wars on resources that are running out, and it's like you're fighting over the last drops in the barrel,
right?
And you're using the last drops to do it. You're just wasting the resources.
Yeah.
That's
one of the most frustrating things for me is that the peak oil is not a mainstream known thing that's going on. If you don't understand the fundamentals of what's happening and what underpins everything, how can you mitigate anything in a good, positive way?
Yeah.
Yeah. If we can't even agree on reality. But I think that's always been it, is like you think about it, the people who run things try to control the reality. That's the big thing. You have to keep people kind of in the dark a little bit and try to control the reality. And I think finding out about peak oil was almost like, for me, it was a key that unlocked all of the reality of what's going on.
Yeah,
and, through that lens, and all of a sudden everything becomes clear and scary as hell.
Yeah, and people are scared as well. And I think there is a almost a subconscious level of knowing to a degree. When I speak to my mum about it, she says, "Well, we know, but no one wants to hear it, Leon. They don't want to hear you tell them." And it's it's the comfort of trying to save that of which you're really not comfortable with, the rat run, right? No one is. So, we're fighting like hell to try and get a 2-week period of holiday abroad or in a nice country setting or the beach or somewhere, which is exactly what we're always drawn back to, which is nature, because it's absolutely inherently part of us. But they don't know how to get out of it, and it's the comfort that they know is the rat run, and that's what they're trying. So the majority of people try and keep that alive, instead of being innovative about positive ways forward.
Right.
Yeah. They almost like they're basically like their whole life is turned into, I have to do this so that I get that, and the society also is providing, like I was watching last night, PBS. And of course there's somebody with a nice upper class English accent talking about the Viking experience, where you get in a Viking longboat and you go up the rivers of Europe and you see all this wonderful stuff. And I was thinking, yeah, that's the next thing they're selling you. They're selling you that, And I have a friend who is very into peak oil, understands all of it, but his wife pressured him and they ended up with a Viking vacation up the river. He had to go. He had to do it. His wife even said, "Quit talking about this because we're going. We have to go on this trip." And I thought, I understand. I know you have to go. It's like,
well, like while they still can, because it's going to be just a few years, and then you just won't be able to, even if you wanted to.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. I mean, there is that also. You think in a few years, you're not going to be, you're going to be, it's like musical chairs. You're going to have to get stuck in a chair and you just stay there wherever it is. The music stops.
Right.
You're stuck in a chair, and a lot of people are going to be stuck without a chair.
Yeah. That's why you have your chair ready. Like,
the one overriding frustrating thing for me though is that you can have a conversation. You know, I can have a conversation with my mum as an example and say, you know, she can acknowledge, well, not in my lifetime, Leon, right?
Right.
Well, actually, Mum.
how long are you planning to live?
Yeah,
8 years. 8
Because,
years, it'll be in your life.
yeah, you might well get caught out, Mum, and that's something you need to think about. But the overriding frustrating thing about that for me is she got 2 grandchildren from me, 2 grandchildren from my brother that are innocent lives being at the moment assimilated by the system. I'm desperately trying for that not to happen, but I have no control over a lot of what's going on with the kids. But Mum's, the one thing I keep thinking is, you know, when I pass away, I want my children to have some sort of life, even if it isn't a very low fuel economy life, you know. Not just say, look, I'm going to die, so when it all collapses, I'm not going to be here. But what about the kids, Mum?
Yeah,
I think you want to find a spot. You want to kind of like, I was thinking, you want to kind of visit this spot, wherever it is. It doesn't matter where it is. So that when you show up there, you know, if you do show up there with the kids, they're not like, who the heck is this? Oh, okay, there's that guy. Okay, that guy that we kind of know, and we, you know, okay, he's got a little cabin someplace or something. I mean, I think that's a useful thing. You know, they call it a bug out place or something. But I think it's not like you're going out to a cabin to live, you know, away from everybody else. You're going to go
to a community.
Little community, and you just stay there and you eat, like, you know, eat at the local restaurant, or you get to know a few people, so
and
they're
be
not
of service to the community. Something you're contributing that makes them feel like, this guy's worth keeping around, and his family.
Like I just joined the Odd Fellows.
But at the same time, I have this desire to want to help my friends and my family, and I think if I'm in another place and they're in turmoil. You know, it's at the moment I'm really pulled around a bit. You know, I know that it will the path will come clear. I know it, so I'm not. You know.
Yeah, I think going to you know, picking a small place and kind of starting to become involved a little bit is a good idea, because I don't know, I kind of feel like, you know, like I noticed during COVID, all of a sudden we go to this island, which is a nice place, right? But it was almost like they were like, the people who were on the island were like, no, we don't want anybody coming here. And if you do come here, it's a 14-day quarantine, right? And we have roots on that island for many, you know, back to, you know, 300 or 400 years. But even still, everybody kind of saw you as, it isn't Swan Island, Swan's Island, as they sort of saw you as a person from away. So I thought that was interesting, but we went there and just sat there for 14 days and didn't talk to anybody, you know. But you kind of get this, Swan's Island. I mean, because we were like, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to sit here, you know, in this town that I live in the winter, or are we going to go to Swan's Island? I mean, gotta go to Swan's Island, you know. So we just, even if you're not eating any, you know, if you're just hanging out and just eating a little food or whatever.
I think that's good advice. Actually, really good advice.
Yeah, because it is kind of like you just realize, like, what is going to happen, you know? And I kind of think, I don't know. I kind of think it's going to start to get wonky. Things are going to start to get really wonky. Like I noticed things start to break down. Like the ferry breaks down, doesn't really run so great. And then you think, okay, am I going to go back and forth on my little sailboat all the time, or how's that going to work? Maybe it would be better because there's more, you know, transportation on the water, but it's hard to tell what's going to really work, you know? Yeah. It's almost impossible to figure out what's really going to work. But I do think having a bug out somewhere is a good idea. and I have a studio on there called Iver Studio.
Mm-hmm.
You might find that Iver Studio, all one word.
Iver Studio, Swans Island.
Yep. I might have pictures of it.
Yeah.
They have bad pictures. The bad pictures somebody else took over or something. But
There's
yeah,
just-
you know,
Mhm.
it's
What
just
of a
it's
nearby hotel here.
maybe a place to land. That's the nearby hotel, yeah, which
Yeah.
has a charger. You could charge your electric car there.
Mm-hmm. So
Which is
what I'm noticing is you have very thin soils, sandy on granite, and it's acidic.
No soil at all, hardly. I mean, the only
Yeah.
dirt I have is just like created.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
there's also the ocean. The ocean kind of provides.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you
So
could still grow hazelnuts if you want to, because they're shallow rooted.
Well, there might be some there.
Mhm.
I've had
Blueberries.
hazelnuts. Yeah. I mean, it's not a, you know,
You
I
can
mean,
also
there's
do
deer.
pine nuts and bur oak.
Oh, yeah.
You guys ever want
And-
to drop out to talk next time?
John, you had a renewable
Yeah, we'll do it next
energy.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
sorry, I forgot. Oh,
That's right. No, it's
okay,
fine.
okay. We'll do it next
We'll
time.
talk
Okay.
next time.
Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here. All right. Well, we'll probably round up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I should have put that on the list of things to cover.
Yeah, let's do that next time because that's a very interesting thing. Renewable.
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
Mhm.
yeah, all of it is like seen as a big solution for the whole, for all of humanity. And I'm thinking, you know, okay, you can do that, but when the Titanic sinks, it's going to sound mean, but you're not getting everybody off, you know?
No.
And they knew that at the time. You know, they knew only the certain people were going to get off of the Titanic. And so, you know, I think you kind of have to figure out, in my opinion, I still think the lifeboat is a good idea, you know, whatever the lifeboat is,
Mhm.
community-sized lifeboat. Because
Okay.
I think you're not going to save everybody.
For sure. So I'm thinking we need to figure out next time. So December 11th, will that work?
Yep.
Yep.
And we should talk about renewables and what the plan
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I put it. I made a new presentation script for the next one, and I put John Peach renewable presentation as the first thing.
What time? 10 a.m.
So 10 a.m. Yeah. 10 a.m. All right, and I guess we'll get everybody to agree to that. So yeah, Leon, in terms of your situation there, I think, well, from the limited information I have, it sounds like your girlfriend with the rural area is the best bet. And then maybe I don't know what your wife's situation is, if she has a rural boyfriend too, or if what do you call it? She wants to come and check that place out for a visit or something.
Yeah. It's definitely something needs to be looked into. And
So maybe next time your girlfriend goes home for a month, you can just go with her, and then get acquainted with the local.
I'm quite acquainted already. Yeah.
Oh, very good. So you have
Yeah.
a good bug out location
Yeah.
out there in Guangdong.
Yeah, I've been handy in the village.
Oh, that's great.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's-
wonderful. Yeah. That's the main thing is to be providing. And here I had a question here from is being 85 to 100 miles from any major city count? Yes. So that is good. You know, to be far from a major city. And then another
100
thing,
miles.
well, 100 miles or 100 kilometers. The main thing is really in a post, like when so how I'm thinking of this going down, because they're promoting the 15-minute cities, which are basically an euphemism for Warsaw ghettos. So they want to get people into these 15-minute cities and then take away their cars, and then they won't be able to go very far. And so, the walking distance, most people aren't going to be able to walk much more. Like 20 kilometers is how much you can walk in one day if you're relatively fit. And so 100 kilometers would be, several days walk, 5 days walk. If you're a week's walk from the largest city, or from any city over about 60,000 or like 55,000 is the maximum size of a city that we had in pre-industrial times. That wasn't the major capital. And so that's about the maximum amount of city that you could conceivably sustain with horse and buggy. So anything much larger than that can be a source of large amount of outmigration and source of crime. And so you want to be about a week's walk away from these. If you have mountains around you, which I know is the case in this Guangdong area, so that's even better. It doesn't have to be 100 miles or 100 kilometers because people just can't get over all those ridges. There's a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of valleys. And like if you read any of those survivalist fiction, one of the main targets are the highway bandits, right? The highway bandits that just sit out on the highway and then just rob anyone passing through. And so you want to be able to sit tight in a location without having to do much traveling. You want to get all of your food and all of your water on site. And then your community, of course, too. Because sometimes you have those roving bandits that come in, and they can be in groups of usually up to 50 to 60, because most of these roving bandits groups can't organize. They would need to have it's rare for them to get any bigger, but so you would want to have a village of about like a few hundred people with at least some kind of basic plan of what to do against roving bandits. And then like in my peace treaty, of course, with the radios, you can scale it all the way up to the planetary, so it can be in alignment. Like the government can maintain communication and peace through this, as long as they have the right attitude of being compassionate to the people, and doing the distribution and things like that. And then you were saying that they like the Confucian stuff over there, so
it's like
so you may
entwined in the culture.
You may want to look at this document I put in together for the Chinese, and then see some quotes you like and write them down and translate them into the local dialect, and then like have them as kind of like token phrases, just to keep things settled. Like we have to forgive and love all beings, or whatever is their equivalent. He who rules by moral force is like the pole star, which remains in place while all the lesser stars do homage to it. That's in Confucius said that, and so there's a bunch of good quotes in here that could resonate with the locals.
I think it's, I don't know. I think it's going to be I think it'll be kind of a big problem, and there are going to be people coming up with big solutions, which won't work.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's not the truth. The absolute truth isn't out there, so you can't build mitigation off of non-truths.
No, that's the scariest thing is people can't even agree on a reality, so there's no way that they can figure out what's going to happen. But so that's why I think most solutions are going to have to be local. They're going to have to be very local.
It seems that a lot of the governments are aware of what's going on, but they're not telling the public.
Yeah, that's right. It's the narrative is carbon footprints and reduce the carbon, which shields the fact that people is in place, and that's going to be the decline. Yet they're saying that you need to decline because of the carbon, so it brings the brings the decline down the same trajectory, hiding the real truth of
that we're running out of the oil in the first place.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, for what reason? Is it to stop mass panic? Is it to
that's the usual excuse?
Try and transition to something else in the process before the truth comes out.
Yeah. Again, I think it's a lot like the Titanic analogy.
Oh,
But
as in like keeping the poor people below decks and not telling them that the ship is sinking.
And the other thing is the White Star Line is kind of the governments. You just have these people at the helm of different things, the local mayors or the, cities and stuff. Okay, they're like the captain and the crew of the Titanic, they were just sort of told to, don't tell anybody what's going on, don't even tell them the ship is sinking. You have to kind of keep this reality in place while things happen, Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, the upper class passengers all found their way into lifeboats, Yeah.
So
yeah. On this graphic that Simon showed us, it says United States, Canada, and the European Union and the UK are all peak oil literate, so they know what's going on, but they just choosing not to inform the public about it. And based on the plans that they are making, like those 15-minute cities, it seems that I had made these 2 timelines before. I don't think I'll be able to bring them up fast enough, but basically there was the kind of the hard-hearted, callous timeline of and in it the basic gist was that they would kind of continue on with this where they're forcing everybody into the cities and then like letting the rich have everything. And then in the 2030s they'd like well, it said they'd take away all the media and then say, oh, welcome to the great transition or whatever. It would just be like a fake. And then by the 2040s there would be a large amount of infighting within their groups, and they would themselves collapse. And then after that would be the transition for the regular people that survived all of the famines and the Warsaw ghetto style situations. So it seems like what they're doing with that 15-minute cities is that they know there isn't enough for everybody at the way that they're doing it now. But instead of transitioning to something more sustainable, like ruralization or something like that, they're just kind of pulling the wool over people's eyes and then forcing them into little areas and then taking away their cars. Meanwhile, they're buying up, $1 million rural estates with their own private farmers and gardeners. And I know Iver knows them. Or the people that do that for these ultra rich.
They're doing it in the UK. They are doing it in the UK. They've moved into a lot of the ultra rich have gone into the South Downs, Winchester, through Brighton, South Downs, bought up the land and the set up shop there. Yeah. Built orchards, grown orchards, and all sorts.
Yeah, which is interesting, but and this is going to sound a little bit like you're pandering or whatever, but if you can get into one of those communities, even if you're like a little lower level peon, it's not a bad gig.
It depends. It depends on your temperament. Yeah, if you want to be a serf, then go ahead.
Well, I'm not saying surf, but I mean that's like I'm on Swan's Island. A lot of people show up there that are pretty loaded, right? And thing about it is, I've painted houses, I've done construction, I've done different things, and you might not like it or whatever, but I mean, there's kind of an economy there, which there isn't in other places. The other places I live in Skowhegan, I mean, there's an economy, but it's not really, it's okay. It's not great.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you have to figure out a way to live.
Yeah, basically what I remember in the timeline is that when it gets bad enough, they're just going to blockade the cities and not let people leave. And then just let them eat each other because they won't have any other source of food. And meanwhile, all the rich will stay in the rural areas. So if you're living in the rural areas, you're going to be okay, especially if you're supporting the economy, like, growing food or firewood or whatever, because they need you. They need rural people to do stuff in the rural areas. But they don't need the urban people.
No, I mean, we've fixed up houses for people. One lady, she said, I want to paint my entire floor white. So I was like, okay, you want to paint your whole floor white. The second you get a little piece of dust, you'll see it. She didn't care. That's what she wanted. So I would vacuum very carefully and just paint. And then, the whole thing was white. And then, of course, as soon as it dried, one little speck of dirt, you could see it, right? But that's what she wanted. I also did like 20 coats of varnish on her windows. That's what she wanted, a little sand in between. I'm looking out at a nice view of the ocean, whatever, So it is like you're working for these people, but that's what they want. They keep paying for it. Okay.
I know I've talked to some local construction workers, and they're saying, there's a lot of like ultra wealthy people who are getting these net zero homes, which are like super expensive, but it's like they seem to have like bottomless bank accounts, and they're just building them. And so and they're like it was like $50,000 just for a door.
Yeah. I mean,
they're like okay with it.
I don't know if they're really going to work after or whatever, but they do seem to be a way to, they are spending money on this. And if you're there to help, that kind of helps. If you got some skills, you have to have some skills. And, when I was younger, I used to build houses and stuff, I don't know. I mean, I'm a son of an immigrant. So, you have to figure your way out in the world, So I think it's possible, but I think you're right. I think big cities are going to become really difficult places to live, whatever happens. And they might not make sense.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like they're working towards ruralization at this point. Yeah.
No.
So yeah, based on this, North America is pretty good.
Some part.
or some parts of it. Yeah.
New York City is pretty tough.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Looking at this global population density, New York City doesn't even hardly show up anymore. It used to be the biggest city in the world.
Yeah. It's right over there. It's just
that's pretty glob, but it's nothing compared to
even Nigeria or Kenya or.
And look at
well, this is Kenya. That's Ethiopia. Yeah. And there's
India.
India is nuts. Yeah, India is gonna be. I mean, like looking at this, China doesn't look great, but because you got all those mountains and you have a rural location, you might be all right. And it's better than the UK, which you can see is like all covered.
Well, it is, but it doesn't. Even compared to. I'm just surprised at some of these places. Look at Central America. How's that look?
It's pretty packed.
Central America is pretty packed.
Yeah.
And I think, since I live there, it's more and more packed. So,
Yeah, Central. This is going to be not pretty over here in these islands. For sure. Mexico City, there's no way of supplying food for those places without diesel.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because when I lived there, most people grew their own food in Central America.
Yeah, there might still be some in the rural areas, but here Argentina looks like land. Down here. There's nobody there. So that looks like a safe place too.
Yeah,
or inland.
Well,
yeah, but most of these other areas in Eurasia and Africa, they're just deserts. The empty parts are just deserts, or like Russia. I mean, Russia is one of the better locations if you're able to deal with the government there, or the corruption and the crime.
All of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. You got to sort of bloom where you're planted, I guess. Try to make it. But you look at it and you just realize, wow, India. There's no way that works.
No. Right now, I checked, and they're at a quarter hectare per person in a lot of their areas. And I mean, that is only possible by fossil fuels. That is just providing the food and not the heating or the firewood. So all of their heating and firewood is coming through fossil fuels, and all of their transportation. And so, and the only reason they're able to grow food like that at that kind of density is because of modern machinery and things like that. If you look, like, there's like no trees. It's just, or very, very, very few trees. It's all just fields and fields and fields and fields everywhere.
Yeah,
all over India. As far as you can see, anywhere you look on the Indian map, it's like that.
Yeah. And just cities after cities. Did you see that? There was a movie about a Australian, a guy who was adopted in Australia and went back to find his place that he was from, and it was unbelievably difficult because there's so many places, and
in India, yeah,
and it's just going to be tough to keep everybody fed there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be their problem. Is just keeping a lot of people fed is going to be a big job.
Even now, that's a problem.
Yeah, it's now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I don't know. I worry about it, but then I also think, there's not much you can do about the world in general. I mean, I spent 2.5 years as a Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala and saw incredible troubles. I were people who just were not eating very regularly. And I kind of, at one point I came down to this town and I said, let's get going on this bridge project. And they all looked at me and they said, we'd like to get to work, but we're waiting for that corn to grow so we can get a little bit of energy so that we can do that, right? And I realized, duh. So I got corn and beans brought down to the, we got it down, they struggled up the hill, got it down to the village, and we built a small bridge project,
Wow. That's real energy limits there, when the food is the energy limit.
Yeah.
No, they were starving. They were starving until the corn grew.
Yeah.
And me kind of coming from the U.S., I was like, what's the problem? Let's get going.
Mm-hmm.
So we did get corn and beans and everybody perked up and everything was better, but for one little place.
Yeah. It just reminds me of this passage from my standard leaflet here about the long-term projections. Notably, the projection from the 1980s found the global population decline of 94% by the year 2100, which is measured in hundreds of millions. So of total people remaining. So plenty of room. Anyone who is prepared to forgive and love all beings, including themselves, and transition to a sustainable lifestyle in cooperation with nature. So, there is, even though there's only going to be a few hundred million people and 94% population decline, there's still going to be hundreds of millions of people.
Yes.
There's still going to be a lot of people remaining, and you can be, and your descendants can be part of those people if you're willing to transition, now rather than when it's too late.
Yes.
Well, I was yesterday. We went and bought. We were at a place, and there were Amish people there, and there were some. They had some babies, and I was thinking these babies are born in 2023, so they will be 77 years old 2100.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. This little child is going to be 77 in 2100 when there's this 94% drop in.
But I had the
they might be okay.
Chat GPT to do the what is the probable times, and it was saying that in order for it to get down to 94% decline, it's not going to drop immediately. It's going to drop over time, and then by 2030, 2040, it would have to drop like 30, 40%. You know,
What?
Well, I mean, in order for it to be 94% by 2100, right? Because like most of the drop would have to be during that collapse period, when we've run out of oil and we can't feed people, right?
Yes.
And so that's when most of the drop will be, during that particular famine, where the mass die-off is. And then there would be even after that, the population will continue to decline. Like we had those, population and oil relationship, graphs, right? So as we have as the oil starts to decline, we will also see a decline in the population. And even after the collapse, basically just from disorder and things like that, things will continue to decline. The population will continue to decline until the roving bandits and things like that wear themselves out and are replaced by local warlords, or the reinstatement of more stable society, which could take another decade or two, depending on how it runs. And so we might continue to have population declines until 2060, 2070. It's hard to say for sure, and then after 2100, it would actually probably already be on the upswing by 2100. We probably will have reached the bottom sometime between 2030 to 2070, and then we'd be on the up and up, but it would just be very few people.
Yeah, but then at that point, you're only able to grow as dependent on your energy supply.
Yeah. Whatever you have.
Yeah. So if it's well, whatever it looks like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, well, though, you're going to get to a point where you live off of the resources of the little place you're in. I mean, like, think about the Middle East before oil. There were just these very small little places that the Dows could get to, just these tiny little cities that were just clinging to the the side of the Red Sea or wherever it was. They just were not very big, and so I think they managed to stay there for 1,000 2,000 years, but it was like, you only end up with these little places that actually make sense for wherever the heck you are. Yeah. So I mean, you live off of, like in England or something, pre-industrialization, you live off of the resources in your little area, although that, they had market towns. I read a book about medieval England, and there were market towns that people would go to. So you kind of had that structure, but you didn't have too much more.
Yeah. I have to go. But yeah, well, it's been great chatting with you, and we'll catch up. So we leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. And may you transition successfully.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Great talking to you guys.